Future is expected to emerge when he comes face-to-face with the NC's top 6 officials this weekend. The party has to decide whether Zuma, as head of state, will deliver the State of the Nation address next week. And Chairperson of the NCOP, Thandi Modise, left the question open when she said yesterday that, quote, whoever is president at the time, unquote, is going to be the one to deliver the SONA. Now, this week, the NC's National Working Committee requested that the party's top 6 officials, who are all mandated to deal with the transition, to move speedily on this matter. Meanwhile, Parliament's Rules Committee has been discussing the proper procedure to give effect to the provisions for impeaching a sitting president. Well, to discuss this further, we're very pleased to be joined by political analyst, Professor Somadoda Fikeni, who's joining us from our Pretoria studios. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Sorry to keep you waiting now. We saw the whole country waiting with bated breath of the outcomes of the NEC last week. But what do you think are some of the possible scenarios after Zuma's meeting with the top 6 officials come this weekend?
Well, I do think that they might likely agree on a transitional arrangement, but that is less likely to happen immediately, because if we use the history of how President Zuma has reacted to some of these recalls and his supporters, it has not always been accepted, in a manner that it ought to be. So one would expect that he may insist on delivering the State of the Nation address, and we would still be treated to the same chaotic experiences in Parliament and outside Parliament. And you may even see some of the splinters of his supporters coming to try and support him.
And speaking of his supporters, Prof, do you believe that there's actually quite a lot of disagreements among the top 6, and that is possibly the reason why this issue is not going forward as some people would like?
Well, I do think that within the top 6, the majority, of course, support the new president, and as such, they would like the matter resolved speedily. But in the Secretariat, you do have Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary who were firmly within the Jacob Zuma faction, and they do not seem to be in the new mood of trying to get and support the transitional arrangement. One would understand why, because the legal challenges seem to be growing, especially around the Secretary General, whose offices were raided and whose children may also be subject of investigation. Hence, he's actually trying to also whip up emotions and support around the matter of the president of the country.
Now, Prof, look, this uncertainty comes at such a critical time when the ratings agencies are all looking and waiting for decisive action on these so-called cleanup measures. Let's look at it in your opinion based on our first point. Who could or should deliver the SONA? Technically, Zuma should deliver this, not?
I do think that the president of the country should deliver the State of the Nation address, and that is how the whole matter is set. But here the uncertainty comes because President Zuma, in all likely possibility, is an outgoing president. At some point during 2018, is likely to leave his position. But secondly, the question as to whether he may take all what is coming from Luthuli House and deliver it instead of delivering what he may believe in, and which he may use the same stage to try and justify some of his actions. That is the real fear after his announcement of free education, apparently without first consulting with Treasury, with different role players.
Yeah. Now, Prof, let's look forward. How would then that process unfold? Maybe if Zuma then wasn't the president, isn't there another process to then elect an interim president, or people just think it's just cut and dry that Ramaphosa assumes these duties?
Well, I do think that the scenarios are the following. If President Zuma may actually simply not cooperate with the ANC leadership and resist leaving anytime soon, then you are likely to have more pressure from the civil society opposition and the current leadership of the ANC. Of course, not without the resistance of the faction that had supported President Zuma leading to the elections in Nasrec. But ultimately, given the court cases, the pending impeachment, and all kinds of legal challenges, he may finally succumb to that pressure at some point.
And Prof, before I let you go, a quick one. Now we hear that, of course, that motion of no confidence will be debated on the 22nd of Feb. This, of course, well after the address. And we've heard the EFF saying they're mad at this because it's supposed to be earlier. But Zuma delivering or not delivering this SONA, does it really make a huge difference, Prof? As you've said, sometime in 2018, he will have to vacate office. In what way? We also know that the rules to impeach the president will also be motioned for adoption around this very same time, which is after the State of the Nation address.
Well, the State of the Nation address is so close now that there might be not that much of a big difference. But if this vote of no confidence is held on the 22nd of February, it will simply add to the pressure on the president. And remember that the last vote of no confidence came, tantalizingly close for the opposition. And for those who wanted to see the president go, there is a fear now that he's no longer at the helm of the ANC, that you may have more members joining, and therefore he may end up losing that majority. That is one possibility. Or else you may have the impeachment process accelerated, which may threaten even some of his benefits if he is dishonorably discharged.
Thank you so much for that outlook. That is Professor Somadoda Fikeni joining us live from our Pretoria studios with analysis on the upcoming State of the Nation address, of course, that motion of no confidence debate.